let's get started. I'm going to start with a very basic. What is a capital plan? Capital projects, well, capital plan is the plan, city's plan for capital projects. So capital projects are projects that cost more than $50,000. That seems arbitrary, but that is how the New York City defines a capital project. It has to cost more than 50,000. It also must be a physical, tangible, in other words, brick and mortar project. So you have to be able to touch it. Technology can be eligible, but it's a little bit tricky. You cannot buy one computer because clearly one computer does not cost $50,000. It is not for hiring people, even though you can touch people, but that's not capital, or running a program. Those are considered expenses. And projects must have a useful life of 5 years after completion. So if it's something that's tangible, costs $50,000, but it's only useful for 3 years, then you cannot, that's not an eligible capital project. So the capital plan has, okay, I'm sorry. Camille, can you manage thank you, the waiting room? Awesome. Here's some capital plan basics. It is prepared by the New York City Department of Education and the School Construction Authority. It is done in partnership, even though it's the School Construction Authority who does most of the work of building, designing, architectural, engineering, all that stuff. But it is a partnership between the Department of Education and School Construction Authority. This is something you should know. Some of you know this already, but it gets very confusing sometimes. New York City's fiscal year is from July 1st to June 30th every year. And the way we use the nomenclature for fiscal year is fiscal year 2026 means it's the year that starts on July 1st, 2025, and that ends on June 30th, 2026. So when you hear FY26, it's the year that ends on June 30th of 2026. If you hear FY30, it's June 30th, 2030. That's the last day of that fiscal year. The capital plan is a 5-year plan, and the current plan is from 2025 to 2029. Every 5 years, they come up with a new plan. But there's also an annual review and amendment process in November. So the plan, it covers 5 years, but there is an annual process that happens every year. And on the School Construction Authority's website, you can access many, many documents, and capital plan is one of them. And it's not just one 5-year plan on the website. And if you go to the website, you will actually see there is the original plan proposed, and then there is the November amendment of the first year, November, and then there is the February amendment. So under the 2025-2029 capital plan, you will see several documents on the website. The overall timeline for the process is November is when the new 5-year plan or the annual amendment is released. Sometimes it's late, but most years they do an okay job of making this deadline. So the new amendment for the current plan will be coming out next month. Through November and December, you are reaching out for capital improvement requests from your schools. If you're a CEC member, you should be reaching out to your liaison schools and asking them what their capital project needs are. If you are a PTA executive board member or on the school leadership team, you should be thinking about what your school building needs in terms of capital improvements. December and January, School Construction Authority will be making presentations at citywide councils and CEC and community education councils. There should be a request to schedule a meeting from the School Construction Authority going to your CEC or Citywide Council. Usually it's the administrative assistant that receives it, but if you don't have an AA, it's whoever is monitoring that inbox will get the request. You should definitely schedule that meeting with the School Construction Authority. You can do it as a standalone, as a committee meeting, or you can do it as part of your calendar meeting. And then you are supposed to solicit requests from your liaison schools, and then you compile them and you rank them, and then you submit that ranked requests to the School Construction Authority in early January. At the same time, community education councils and citywide councils can prepare a comment letter that is a more broad comment letter on the entirety of the capital plan if your council wants to. For a long time, District 2 CEC, which is what I served on, we had a comment letter that pointed out the need for ADA accessibility in the schools. Some of the older school buildings are still completely non-ADA compliant. So we always wrote a letter saying that the city has to put more money into ADA compliance as a priority. And then we had a couple other things that we brought to their attention. So if your council wants to do a comment letter like that, you should definitely do that. But at the least, you're supposed to be ranking requests from your liaison schools and submitting that ranked request to the SCA. And then in February, the School Construction Authority releases a revised plan. Revisions are based on feedback from the community, supposedly, like the CECs, and other feedback from probably elected officials and whatever else they get new information from. They do release a February revised plan. It probably is also tied to the mayor's preliminary budget that comes out in January. So there's some fiscal changes that happens between the November plan and the February plan. And in April, the Panel for Education Policy votes on the capital plan. And then in June, the City Council votes on the capital plan. And at that point, the capital plan becomes, or the capital plan, the new plan, or the amendment for that year becomes official. If you have any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of a comparison over the years of annual plan, the annual changes in the capital plan. So the table shows you that 2020 to 2024 plan, the last 5-year capital plan, didn't have a category called healthy schools. That is something that was new in the current capital plan. That's the 5-year plan. But back in the last 5-year plan, the city was spending, and this is actually the actual money they spent under the plan. They actually do a final report on the 5-year plan at the end of that 5-year period. So that's where I got the numbers from. They spent a total of almost $18 billion. And capacity was a big chunk, but also capital investment was a huge chunk of that money. And then came the new current 5-year plan, which was introduced in November of 2023. And that proposal totaled $17 billion. So that was the initial proposal for the current 5-year plan released in November of 2023. In February of this year, the most recent amended 5-year capital plan actually had a total dollar amount of $20 billion, $20.5 billion. So I'm showing this to you because this increase, I think we should take credit for that, because advocates really push for changes to the capital plan, especially around the capacity. Class size reduction has been a big thing with the capital plan. And it really is a lot of advocates pushing for more money in the capital plan. So it's a pretty decent increase from the original plan amount of 17 billion to 20.5 billion. But between the February amended plan this year and the June plan that the City Council approved, we lost $1.5 billion. So the city council just cut out a little thing here and there, and we ended up with $19 billion, which is unfortunate, but sometimes that happens. One of the things that, wait, did I skip a slide? No? Oh, here we go. That was just the red circle that I wanted to point at. Okay. One of the things that you need to look at in the capital plan, the actual document, the plan itself isn't that voluminous, but the important information is actually in the appendices. So you can go through the plan itself with nice pictures and little charts here and there and beautiful photographs everywhere. You can do that, but you should definitely look at the appendices because that's where critical information is. Pardon me. And the appendices are organized by citywide information, but also district and school specific information in the appendices as well. Just remember when you see D78 in the school specific information or district specific information in the appendices, that refers to high schools. That's the School Construction Authority way of identifying high schools as District 78. So if you see that number, that means high school buildings. So, quick quiz. Capital or expense? You can put it in the chat. A new cafeteria, is that a capital project? All right. How about a gym renovation? Rooftop greenhouse. Rooftop greenhouse, it depends, yeah, but with the kind of costs we're talking about, $50,000 being a threshold, most likely capital. Gardening program. That's a no, it's a program, right? Arts program is a no. After school program is a no. So the rooftop greenhouse I put down as yes, again, because with the way the city bids out these projects, it is unlikely you can get a greenhouse up on the rooftop under $50,000. But it's possible. If you can get a greenhouse up on the roof with $30,000, then it won't be a capital plan. A capital project, I should say.
Can I
How
ask
about,
a question? Can I
yeah,
ask
go
a
ahead.
question about that?
Yep.
So in comparison, it often comes up that libraries are not capital plans, but I don't really get an explanation as to why. So just in comparison with the greenhouse, wouldn't libraries be similar?
It depends on what it is you're trying to do, right? If you're trying to create a whole new library, probably. But if you're replacing just the rug in the library, maybe not. If
Right.
you're reconfiguring the space within the library, maybe not.
So it was
So
the first, it was constructing a whole new library.
it should be. I don't know how you can do that under $50,000.
Correct. Okay. So
Yeah,
this is helpful. Thank you.
yeah. But it's a gray area, right? We don't really know how much something costs. So
Correct.
maybe you can create a brand new library under 50,000. I kind of doubt it, but it's
Right.
possible. Yeah.
So yes, creation of the library, but not the library books.
Right. Right.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So replacing all windows in a school, if all windows are being replaced, very likely a capital project. Repairing a broken window, no, because it doesn't cost $50,000. New curtain in auditorium, likely no. Again, it shouldn't cost $50,000 to replace a auditorium curtain. But if you're doing a whole bunch of stuff in the auditorium, it could include the curtain replacement as part of that package of auditorium renovation. New furniture is actually not capital eligible. Classroom reconfiguration, it depends. If you're reconfiguring classrooms significantly enough that it hits that threshold, then it can be a capital project. But if you're just knocking down one wall, it probably isn't. So let's go through the current capital plan and what's in it. And I took all this information from the most recent iteration, which I think is the February 2025 version. Yes, Paquita, go ahead. You should be able to,
Hi.
yep.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. Hi. Wait, I just want to go back a little bit. What about you said replacing furniture? No. What about if you need new chairs?
You're going to have
Or
to find money from somewhere else. It's not going to go under the capital budget.
okay, and I must have missed something. The capital budget is 50,000 and under?
More, 50,000 and
Oh,
over.
50,000 and more.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Now, if you're doing the order, excuse me, the auditorium, so you're going to get new curtains, you're going to do the stage. Can you get new seats also?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
Oh, it
definitely a
has,
capital project.
okay,
Yeah.
but just to get a chair. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank
If you
you.
just want to replace the curtain by itself, then
Right.
probably not. But if you're doing a whole renovation of the auditorium, then yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm. So what's in the current 5-year plan? There are 4 major categories: capacity, healthy schools, capital investment, mandated programs. Capacity refers to new capacity that's building new schools. It also includes temporary structures removal. I guess some schools have temporary classroom structures that are not necessarily temporary classroom units that are referred to as TCUs, but other types of temporary structures that got built usually to accommodate overcrowding. So removal of those structures, as well as the temporary classroom units, which were all over the place in overcrowded districts to accommodate overcrowding. But the SCA has been steadily removing those temporary classroom units because they are not real classrooms and they are supposed to be temporary. And that removal of TCUs actually also includes playground new design, redesign and renovation of playgrounds. So these TCUs are often placed in play yards. So as the SCA removes these TCUs, the SCA is actually renovating and redesigning the playground as well. Early education, this is pre-K centers. The DOE is trying to transfer pre-K centers or pre-K classrooms managed by the ACS, Administrative for Children's Services, over to DOE so that they come under the DOE jurisdiction. So that kind of capital cost associated with that is also included in the capacity. The healthy schools is really about healthy for students, but also sustainability measures for the whole city. So electrification is a big part of it. And that's really just getting us off fossil fuels where we can and electrifying power needs. Heating plant upgrades, those boilers and heating units that cannot switch over to electricity, they're trying to upgrade them to use less harmful fossil fuel sources. So I think these are number 4 oils because number 6 oils are banned in the cities, something like that. So these first two are definitely for making schools more sustainable, the buildings more sustainable. Then there are physical education enhancements. These include swimming pools, athletic fields, and gymnasiums and whatnot. And then school gardens and cafeteria redesign. All these items go under healthy schools. These are renovations and capital projects that enhance students' learning. Capital investment, this is where a lot of your school's requests will come in. These are capital improvements such as bathroom upgrades, cafeteria upgrades, auditorium upgrades, and renovations, but it also includes enhancement, like adding a dance room or other types of enrichment spaces, and also projects that are directed by electives. Now, I try to find out more about this. It's not necessarily RESO A money, but apparently there are certain projects that the mayor wants to direct and the city council wants to do. I guess this could be air conditioning projects, I'm not sure. Mandated programs are those that are required. So the local law mandates, there are a whole bunch of local laws that require all buildings to do certain things. Building code compliance is also under this. Insurance for the SCA and the contractors and subcontractors are under this mandated program. And it's capital costs, even though it's insurance policy premium pay, but it's under the capital plan. And also any emergency. So these are the buckets in the current 5-year plan. And the dollar amount in the February plan is shown in this pie chart. It's about $7 billion for capacity projects, 2.2 or 2.3 billion for healthy schools, 7.5 billion for capital investment, and 3.7 for mandated programs. But again, these are not the dollar amounts that actually finally got approved by the city council. So some of these figures are a little bit different in the final approved. And this is what so I'm going to go through capacity, each of the 4 buckets a little bit more in detail. Capacity program is at 6.98 billion. That's where we ended up. So if you look at the February, oops, no, sorry, it's the same. Okay. This actually, it's a category that didn't change from the February to the June approved plan. They kept all the dollar amounts the same, but 6.13 billion for new school constructions, and that amounts to 10,596 seats across all 5 boroughs. And remember, this is for 5 years. So at the end of 2029, under this capital plan, we'll have 10,596 new seats. It's also that 200 million for temporary structures removal and 50 million for TCU, that's the temporary classroom units removal with playground upgrade packaged together. 400 million for replacement seats. These are schools that are located in leased buildings. So lease renewals are in this category, but also sometimes leases are not renewed, so these schools have to relocate. So the cost of new lease, cost of relocations, that is under that. It's 400 million, which is pretty substantial. And early education, again, is the ACA pre-K centers being transferred to the DOE and other standalone pre-K centers. Capital investment is $6.37 billion. And it breaks down to exterior and interior. These are your sort of state of good repair type works, parapet walls, the exterior brickworks, interior flooring, and that kind of things that needs to be done on a regular basis. And this work is prioritized for those buildings that have identified parts of the building that are poor or fair to poor in what's called the Building Conditions Assessment Survey. And I'll go into that a little bit later. So it's actually a really important document that every school has, this Building Conditions Assessment Survey. It identifies every part of your building and assesses the condition. The flooring is poor, but the electrical is fair to poor. The roof is good. And that kind of rating is what drives the decision-making by the school construction authority. If something is labeled poor, then they're going to prioritize fixing that. For new construction, Tam, all new buildings are supposed to be ADA accessible completely. Whether it's really completely ADA accessible or not, I do not know, but they're supposed to be. Okay, facilities enhancements. This is where your schools will be interested in. These are the upgrades to library, kitchen, bathroom, science labs, and whatnot. Dance rooms. And that's $830 million. That's a nice hefty sum. Accessibility, I pull this out specifically because they are putting in $800 million to continue the work of ADA accessibility expansion. They're not going to make every single building accessible with this level of funding, but they are steadily putting in money to make more schools accessible either fully or partially. And then technology has its own category under this capital investment, and that's $1.25 billion. That's a hefty sum, but it includes things like classroom connectivity, networking, data security, and a whole bunch of other digital technology infrastructure. Healthy schools has all these different subcategories. Electrification is a big item, $1.4 billion. It's more than half of the entire Healthy Schools budget. That's electrical upgrades and transition from fossil fuel to electricity. So that's a big project. Heating plant, I'm sorry, I'm missing a T in there. Heating plant upgrade, that's repairs and renovation with more sustainable alternatives to fossil fuels where these systems cannot be electrified. And then physical education enhancement, that's upgrades to athletic fields, swimming pools, gymnasiums, and playgrounds. And that's $325 million. And then there is the health and nutrition, that's learning and food gardens for schools and cafeteria redesign. And then mandated programs for 3.4 billion has quite a few different elements to it. Asbestos and lead removal still continues to be a project for the SCA. That's 260 million. Building code compliance is $332 million, and it's an ongoing compliance project. And also there are new local laws passed by the city council that the schools will have to come into compliance with. Building conditions assessment survey. Again, this is the survey that's done in every school every single year. And that is $100 million price tag because it is actually a walkthrough with engineers and architect and the SCA folks. And they really do a very thorough assessment of the condition of each school building. Insurance is $900 million. That's a big ticket item. And it covers the insurance for the SCA, contractors, subcontractors working on a project. And it's a pretty comprehensive coverage from what is in the capital plan that includes things like workers' comp. Prior plan completion, this is interesting. It's $1.1 billion. These are projects that got started in the last 5-year capital plan. But to finish these projects, they needed to add $1.1 billion. So this is the cost of finishing projects that got started under the last plan. But also these are non-construction costs needed to complete projects. And I can't tell you what they might be because I'm not an architect or construction people. But I suppose these are like the punch list that are beyond the contract, whatever they are, but it's a big ticket item. And then there's the emergency of $326 million. Apparently there's a law that says you cannot set aside an emergency fund that is more than 5% of the total capital plan. So this has a cap. I actually don't know if this is 5% of $19 billion. I haven't done the math. So how projects are selected for the capital plan? Again, Building Conditions Assessment Survey, or BCAS. Engineers and architects conduct the survey with a principal, and they look at everything in the building: electrical, plumbing, floor, ceiling, walls, everything. And the conditions are rated by priority, number 1 through 5. I think 1 is good and 5 is bad. I can't remember which way is which. And high priority conditions, those rated as poor or fair to poor, those are the ones that are actually included in the capital plan, because that means that these conditions are really deteriorating and they need to be fixed before something bad happens, like a huge flooding or something that can endanger students. And the BCAS can be found from the school's website, schools.nyc.gov. Find your school, go to data and report section of your school's website, and then go to facilities. You will have the BCAS under there. Definitely take a look. And this is what it looks like. It's just one sample. This is for PS1 in Manhattan. There are 3 components to the BCAS: architectural, electrical, and mechanical. And this is the architectural inspection, 1 page out of many, many pages. They have photographs of the conditions and they tell you the rating. This one is poor. You see number 5 here, but no violation recorded. At least that's a good thing. But the condition is poor. So this would be something that would make it into the capital plan. So where to find the funded projects in the capital plan? Again, in the appendices. There's the BORA summary, the school-based program, and school-based reports. So you have to really dig into the appendices of the plan. This is the table of contents from the appendices. So you can see that there's the plan summary, citywide categories, and then you go down to the borough of Manhattan. That's because I'm in Manhattan. You go to your borough and you look up the school-based program. That's where you find the projects at the school level that are included in the capital plan. And this is what that page looks like. Again, this is in District 1 in Manhattan. The building ID is 64. The school is PS 64. And this school is getting system replacements, cafeteria, multi-purpose room upgrade at a price tag of $648,000. And then PS 110 is getting surveillance camera installation. And PS 134 is also getting a surveillance camera installation. Interesting how the prices are different. I guess the number of cameras are different. So you can look at the appendices to really see what each school is getting. And I would recommend you do that. And now I'm going to hand it over to Camille.
Thank you, Sheena. Hi, everybody. So this is Camille Casaretti. I am on the board of the ECC. I'm also the Education Policy Chair, and I have been lucky enough to have years and years of experience doing this work and thrilled to share whatever I can with you all. So regarding submitting capital improvement requests, there is a process that we all go through as parent leaders. When I was on the PTA and SLT, we would have conversations about building needs. For example, our gym was sweltering, even though we had 4 absolutely enormous windows, but we couldn't open them because the gates outside prevented our windows from opening. And our auditorium was unbearably hot. The audio, video equipment didn't work, and it couldn't be replaced without an electrical upgrade. So while we were advocating for air conditioning in our gym and better AV equipment, what we didn't realize is that there were these other behind the scenes projects that needed to be done before any of the things that we were asking for could happen. Basically, we needed electrical upgrades. And so there was no point in asking for air conditioning if we didn't have the electricity to support it. And it's very disappointing that some of our schools received air conditioning units for their classrooms, and then they're sitting in the basement in storage because they can't be connected because of the electrical upgrades. So if anybody knows about schools that are in that situation, please let us know so that we can try to get SCA and DSF to fast track some of these electrical upgrades when we can. So I think this is where a lot of us get stuck when we're advocating. You really need to understand where the problem lies before you can start asking for specific capital improvements. And you don't really know that just right from the start. When you start advocating, you kind of learn these things as you go. And so it's great that we're having these workshops so that we can tell you all of the things that we learned along the way, and hopefully that'll help you in your advocacy as well. Let's go to the next slide, Sheena. So there's a process for CECs when you're trying to gather information for the capital plan list. Ideally, your CEC is tracking needed capital projects throughout the year and continuing to uplift these requests to elected officials, including the borough president. Don't forget about the borough president, because they have plenty of money that they can share as well. If enough schools are requiring similar items like water fountains or air conditioners, it's easier to advocate for the entire district. You could do that through a resolution. Although most school visits are done in the fall, you can and should do your visits all year long. I was in 2 schools today. I was in 2 schools last week. I'm going to keep trying to do that through the rest of the year. And I like to invite the Division of School Facilities, which is DSF, to my walkthroughs, because they can get a lot of work done too. If they are with you when you're doing your walkthroughs and something comes up along the way, they can just fast track whatever they can do on their end. So it's really worth taking them along and getting to know them. And so this is work outside of SCA. These are smaller projects, like under $50,000 projects DSF can manage. And then in November, the School Construction Authority will typically come and visit CECs and give them like a sort of high level presentation of what they do. So as Shino had mentioned earlier, you want to seek input from your school community on capital needs. And after your council members have collected requests, as a team, you would rank those needs and then submit the list to the SCA in early January. And again, as Shino had talked about earlier, you can decide if your council wants to write a statement letter to City Council or to prepare a resolution of some sort. Next slide, please. So if anybody has any questions, again, just feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll answer as we go. So these are the steps that CEC members go through to create a priority list. You should know that the SCA will prioritize anything that has to do with waterproofing the building. So if there's leakage in any classrooms, anything that relates to a tripping hazard or safety hazards, those things are going to be prioritized no matter what. You don't even have to put them on your list. You just have to let SCA know that these things are happening and they will be prioritized anyway. And please check the Building Condition Assessment Survey, that's the BCAS that Sheena was talking about earlier, before you add projects to your capital list. There's no point in duplicating what is already existing on a list somewhere else. Everything in the BCAS report is already in a queue. It might be listed as a level 3 or level 4, level 5 priority in the BCAS report, but so the priority number may not be where you want it to be, but it's part of an already existing list. So it doesn't need to be replicated on the CEC list. If you want to get something on the BCAS sort of fast tracked, then you just need to write a letter and tell them this is really becoming a much bigger problem and we need somebody to come and look at this right away and take care of it. So just, I mean, I can't like say enough times that adding the same items to the CEC list is basically wasting your ask, because once the list gets submitted, if it's already existing, it's already somewhere in that universe. And like, you just want to figure out where it already exists and get them to move faster on it. So what you want to put on the SCA list are new projects, ideally. So I just want to say that I have actually had a lot of success with getting projects completed faster than they were scheduled. Sometimes a principal will tell you, oh, we received like $200,000 from Senator blah, blah, 3 years ago, and we were supposed to have this done in our school, and it never happened. And if you can get that kind of information and then just like follow up on it and figure out where did all of this fall apart and get it moving. That's what happened recently with a high school that I was working with. They were supposed to have a gym renovation that was 2 years ago. And it just like kind of got stuck in some paperwork craziness. And I elevated it at the end of the last school year, and they just started doing demo this week. So, it's really important to follow up on some of these things that they don't seem like, oh, well, that's not really part of the SCA capital plan. It's like something of the past. But the things of the past, you actually can get done a lot faster than the new list if you want to take the time and do the research to figure that out. So don't let that money's just going to be sitting there. Like, it's once the elected officials kind of pigeonhole it, or is that what that's called? It goes into like a holding bay, and until SCA takes it out, it's just sort of sitting there. And so we really want to try to follow up on all of these promises that the elected officials have made, because otherwise that money is just like sitting there forever and ever and ever. Okay, next slide. Capital improvements and partnerships. So it is super important if you are a CEC member and you are doing a walkthrough in a co-located building, please, please, please do not ignore the other schools that are in the building. This is like, one whole building, and we want to make sure that we're collaborating with the principals of the building, with the PTA leaders of the entire building, with the citywide councils. And like, let's not operate in a silo, because we could be, kind of doing all of this work that we don't need 4 people to go and walk the same exact building. You know what I mean? Like, we just want to try to be efficient and effective. Next slide, please. Okay, funding sources, super, super, super important. SCA is not like the only area where we can get money from. There are multiple sources for funding. And as a CEC member, or even as a PTA member, as an SLT member, you can call all of your elected officials to let them know that your school has these facility needs. And the more elected officials that you can get to offer funding, the better. Like, the SCA really likes to see, I got like 100,000 from city council, I got 50,000 from the Senate, I got like another 80,000 from the borough president's office. So if you have like a lot of elected officials putting money into one project, it is almost assuredly going to get backed by the SCA. And so if you can collect 50% of that money from the elected officials, the SCA usually will put in the rest of the money. So that's a way to get things done really quickly without relying solely on the SCA, which takes forever if that's what you're going to solely rely on. And then last thing is, unfortunately, the School Construction Authority will not begin a project until they have all of the money. So there are some advocates here on this call that have raised $650 million, but that was not enough. They needed a lot more. And so that money's still sort of like sitting there waiting for more elected officials to put more money in, or for the SA to put more money in. To just be aware that the larger your project is, you just really need to focus on trying to get as much money as you can from as many different sources. Okay, next slide, please.
Before you go on, I just wanted to say that if you are on a community education council, you'd want to share your list with your city council members and the borough president if you have a relationship. I used to get asked by city council members in District 2 because they know when we're doing this process, and they say, can you share the list so that they can do the outreach to the principals who submitted something through the CEC? So it's a good idea if you prepare the list, share that list with the city council members and also the borough president.
Okay, so this is a sample spreadsheet that the CEC administrative assistant typically would fill out and submit to SCA. So prior to filling this out and submitting the list to School Construction Authority, please show this list to the Division of School Facilities. Some councils will end up with hundreds of requests, and after DSF goes through the lists, labeling what falls under DSF, what falls under SOA, what falls under SCA, you are likely going to end up with a much smaller list. And so in that smaller list, you can figure out what your top 5 priorities are. And then you can list all the rest at the bottom of the spreadsheet. But don't list the DSF projects because DSF is going to take care of those on their own. And as Sheena was saying, make sure you're sending these lists to the elected officials as well. Okay, Sheena, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Okay, we're going to quickly go through capacity projects. And this is actually becoming an issue again because of class size reduction law, which is a great thing, but we need to build more schools. So school capacity has its own process. It's really based on projections and inventory of seats. How many seats are available? What are we projecting in terms of number of students? And that becomes the capacity need. Projections are done by consultants. Statistical forecasting is the company that's doing it now. And there are a whole bunch of documents you can look up from the SCA website. Enrollment projections for the New York City Public Schools, 2018 to 2019 to 2027, 2028. I listed that there, but since then there are more recent ones that goes up to 2033. So you might want to look at the projections just to see what the consultants are projecting into the future. Inventory of seats is done every year through a report called the Enrollment Capacity and Utilization Report, also known as the Blue Book. This is the book that looks at it's based on the principal's annual school survey, which looks at every single room in your school building and assigns a usage to each room. This is a classroom, this is a gym, this is a storage, this is the secretary's office, so on and so forth. And that principal school annual school survey, PASS, gets fed into the Blue Book to calculate the capacity of each school. And then based on the capacity and the enrollment of the school, they calculate the building utilization rate. And then the capacity need gets all these projections and inventory of seats get rolled into the capacity need in the 5-year plan, the capital plan. School capacity and class size law are very closely related. You can't reduce class size unless you have classrooms. And of course, teachers as well, but teachers are hired with expense budget. So in this workshop, we're going to be talking strictly about the physical space for students. The state law that passed in 2022 requires New York City schools to reduce class size to 20 students in K through 3, 23 students in 4 through 8, and 25 students in high schools. But physical education, like gym and performing classes, can have class size of up to 40 students. And there are other caveats as well. We need sufficient space for small class size and sufficient budget to hire teachers. On this hiring teacher side, we're going to be doing budget workshops probably in January into February. So that's where we can talk about how we get money to hire teachers. So let's just talk about how we create more capacity. Total new seats added by 2027. This is from one of the capital plan reports, or maybe it was the projection report. This is what is being projected by 2027. We are adding seats in these neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods are not getting any new seats. District 3 is getting nothing. District 23, these areas, Central Brooklyn, they're not getting anything. Queens up here, Long Island City, Jackson Heights, they're getting quite a few seats. So the need for seats is geographically variable. It's not surprising. And this is what the projection document looks like. This one is from 24-25 through 23-34, 2033, 2034. And in it, they have these tables, and this is what this particular consultant is projecting. And there's a whole methodology to it, which you can look up because it's all up on the SC website. But what they're coming up with is in about 10 years, by 2033, 2034, we are expected to decrease our public school student enrollment down to 668,931 students. Now, this is a projection, so anything can happen between now and 10 years down the road that could change these projection numbers. But this is what the School Construction Authority uses to create the 5-year capital plan. So it is an important projection that we should be aware of. Whether they're accurate or not, only history will tell. And then the enrollment capacity utilization report, the blue book, this is what it looks like. And what it does is it takes the number of students in the schools as of October 31st of each year. Now, this is a super important date for many other things as well. But again, the enrollment number is taken from October 31st number. Capacity, again, it's based on the principal's annual school survey, which is different from the Building Condition Assessment Survey, BCAS. That's a different report. This one looks at every single room, and the principal writes down what every single room is used for. And also the principal has access to the list of rooms that are pre-populated with the sizes of the room already in there. So you know the square footage of every single room in your school building. The principal should really understand the importance of this survey. Sometimes principals actually, I've heard, ask the custodian to do this. That should not be happening. This should really be done by the principal, because every classroom usage needs to be reported accurately, because it matters in terms of the capacity of your school building, because that's what the Blue Book uses, is this survey. This is also important. In co-located schools, it is one principal who fills out the form for the entire building, and the other principals have to approve it. This is particularly important if you have a charter school co-located in your building. You better make sure one, that the principal who's filling out this survey is doing it accurately, and two, the other principals in the building are signing off on what's being filled out. Accuracy of the principal's annual school survey is critically important in understanding the capacity of your school building. Now, the Blue Book has different formulas for different grade spans. Elementary school has a formula, middle school has another one, high school has a different one, and then there is a formula for elementary, middle school together, and then middle school, high school together, and there are a couple different iterations. So there are multiple different formulas for calculating your school's capacity. Utilization is a simple math of enrollment for your school divided by the capacity for your school. And this is what a page from the Blue Book looks like. This is from last year, October 31st, 2024 in District 2. So let's look at PS1. Enrollment is 213 students as of last year, October 31st, but the building's capacity is 479 students. So this school's utilization, the building utilization rate is 44%. That means this school has quite a bit of capacity. Let's look at this school right here, PS6 on the Upper East Side. The enrollment is 656 students, but the building is designed for 547 students. So this school is over capacity at the utilization rate of 120. And that's percent, by the way. They should mark that, 120%. That is an overcrowded school. And you can look at these numbers, and what you want to do as a CEC member or a PTA member or school leadership team member, you want to look at these numbers to make sure that they make sense. Oftentimes, overcrowded schools, yes, this is 198. It's operating at 187% capacity. That's mind-boggling. But when the school is listed as underutilized, let's look at PS42 here. 478 student enrollment, capacity is 625. So this school is operating at 76% capacity. Does that number feel right to you? As somebody who's spending time in the school, if you're a school leadership team member or PTA executive board member, if you're a CEC member, you're visiting the school, does that number seem right? Because the Blue Book formulas are not perfect. And a lot of times, schools that feel to the rim show up as underutilized. So this is something you do want to take a look at and make sure that the numbers actually match with what is happening on the ground inside school buildings. And for CEC members, you want to actually look at the totals for your district. This is the last page of the Blue Book for the District 2 section. And these are the total numbers, enrollment numbers on the left column, and then the capacity of all the schools in District 2. This, by the way, includes high schools. And then the target capacity, the utilization based on the capacity is listed here. And you want to, again, take a look and see, does this jive with what you know about your district? And you want to look at this last line too, charter schools. Conveniently, the Blue Book lists charter school enrollment and capacity for the schools that they occupy and utilization rate. Apparently in District 2, charter schools are operating, in the aggregate, they're operating at 148% capacity. Now, this can raise a red flag because that means charter schools might be looking for more space in this district. And if you look at some of these utilization numbers from the last slide, they might be looking at utilization rates that are 44%, 42%, even 60%. And they might be thinking about moving into some of those schools. And this is another reason why it's really important to pay attention to the Blue Book to make sure that some of your district schools are not at jeopardy of having charter schools inserted in their space. Okay, so the last time the formula for the Blue Book was reviewed was back in 2015. That's 10 years ago. And it was never actually fully completed. At one point, the School Construction Authority said, we're done with this process. We're not going to meet anymore. So there are still some things that we wanted to do to fix the formula, but we never did. So hopefully in the new administration, there's a will to actually revisit the Blue Book formula again. One thing that we should know about middle school and high school Blue Book formula, the formula uses the correct class size of 23 students for 6th through 8th grade and 25 students in high schools, but it assumes that classrooms are used every single period, every day. Which, if you think about it, not all classrooms are used all the time, right? Teachers have prep period. There's lunch period. And some of the rooms cannot be used for every period. Like a dance room cannot be, well, you can, but dance room is a specific room for physical education and dance and movement. Science lab is designed for science classes. You can't have other types of activities in the science lab. You can, but it's not really meant for that. So to assume that every single classroom in middle schools and high schools are in use all 8 periods every single day gives you capacity for the school that's not necessarily accurate. So if you want to understand more, maybe we'll do a Blue Book workshop later, but there are still problems with the formula that really warrants critical review. Also, some rooms might be converted to uses other than originally intended. We've seen a lot of art rooms converted into classrooms or science rooms converted into regular classrooms to address overcrowding. And that actually increases the capacity of the school, even though the school lost a dance room or science lab even. So there are problems with the formula clearly in that area. Okay, so looking at the capital plan again, this is what the capacity section of the capital plan looks like. It lists all the projects that are in the capital plan. Again, if you see 78, that means high school. And this is in the appendix, and you want to take a look and see if there are any capacity projects for your district. For planning capacity, it's actually important because to build a new school takes at least 5 years, often a lot longer. So if you start to see overcrowding, even though the projections said we're going to be seeing steadily declining enrollment, but in some neighborhoods, if there are new housing going up, you might see more students coming into your system. So you really have to start planning 5 years in advance of students entering public school system. So what you want to do is you have to become familiar with your school's capacity, right? What is the current capacity of your schools? Are they operating under capacity or over capacity? You want to understand that. You also want to review the district planning workbook, the stuff that the district planning team from the central DOE gives you as a CEC every year. You want to pay attention to that. What is happening in your district? Are there schools that are overcrowded that are right next to schools that are under enrolled? You might want to have to think about rezoning if those are zoned schools. And you want to look at rezoning of the different kind, like ULURP. Are there housing units going up in some neighborhoods? Will they be creating 2-bedroom apartments in a building? That usually means families are going to be moving in. If families are moving in, are they going to be sending kids to public schools? There are a lot of things that you should be aware of. And also, you should review the class size reports so that you understand what's happening in your schools. and look through the Blue Book. It's boring stuff, but if you're nerdy, it's actually interesting to go through the numbers. And especially if you know some of your schools really well and you look at numbers, and if they don't make sense, that will get you some research project to do. Why do the numbers don't match up with what you know to be happening on the ground in the school buildings? And again, pay attention to what's happening in the neighborhood. Are there proposals for residential buildings? Are there ULURP proposals, rezoning of the kind that's not the school rezoning going on that's going to create a lot of housing stock? Those things will have an effect on your schools. Also, build a relationship with your community boards, because they're the people who are actually paying attention to housing and development and ULURP and all that stuff that you want to actually know about. And understand the landscape in your district. Growth in population, are they happening everywhere in your district, or is it just one particular neighborhood in your district that is seeing a large number of people coming into the public school system? And you do need to be proactive. Again, it takes at least 5 years to build a new school, oftentimes a lot longer. Camille, back to you.
Thank you so much, So we're reaching the end of our workshop, and we're just going to elevate some of our best practices. So we already talked about the idea of creating a capital plan committee on your CEC. This is especially important for councils that do not have an administrative assistant. Otherwise, all of this burden lands on the president. And we want to make sure that everybody is involved and it isn't just the one singular person at the top who is doing all the work, making all the decisions. So creating a committee is one way to ensure that everybody's voice is being heard. So I used to actually create a shared Google spreadsheet with my council, and that really helped us to all see what everybody was doing and what kind of projects were being asked for at each particular school. So we would just enter information on the spreadsheet as we went to the school visits. And that was how we started recognizing that everyone was asking for air conditioning in their kitchen because their kitchen staff was fainting, stuff like that. So it is good to have this shared spreadsheet if you can. Next slide is meeting with the SCA and the DOE school facilities. Okay, so when you're scheduling your meeting with your CEC committee or with your entire council, you want to make sure that you're meeting with the Division of School Facilities prior to submitting your list to the School Construction Authority. You're going to be categorizing what projects are capital plan projects, which count as Reso A, which are the elected official funded projects, which projects are going to be managed by the Division of School Facilities. And then the non-capital plan projects, again, are those that are under $50,000. Now, of course, how do you know which projects are worth $50,000 and which aren't? So you're going to ask. And the best people to ask, in my experience, is the Division of School Facilities people. They usually are able to tell you very quickly. And I don't mean very quickly, like I ask a question, they tell me right away. Like maybe within a couple of days, they can get you a legitimate budget for a project. So you'll know what you're talking about, and you'll know when you can just start asking elected officials right away. Make sure you're elevating any safety related concerns. Like crazy things happen on these walkthroughs. I went on a walkthrough once, and the parent coordinator was like, oh, be careful when you're walking down the aisle in the auditorium because some of the ceiling tiles just fell yesterday. So now, of course, this is not going to be on your PCAST report if it just happened. And, this is like, I think it was Paquita that wrote in the chat about How do you get things bumped up on the priority list that are on the BCAS report? That's a perfect example. So the BCAS reports are made once a year, and the architects that are looking at those reports are, they've walked through the school in the summer, and now it's the fall and we have ceiling tiles falling. So those are the things that you want to make sure you elevate right away. Anything like lifted floorboards, that can be tripping hazards, leaking windows, broken boilers. A lot of times what we think is a broken boiler just really needs to have a reset of a, what are those things that you call on the wall there that turns the dial? Like the register? Yeah.
Thermostat?
Yes, the thermostat, exactly. Like it just needs like a new thermostat box, which is not even like one day's work, and all of the problems could be solved. So, and if you see broken sidewalks, here's another thing that we don't really talk about that much. So broken sidewalks have nothing to do with the school or the school construction authority. Those are actually the Department of Transportation. So get all of your parents, the staff, everybody to file a 311 complaint. After you have 3 of the same complaints, they will send an inspector to look at the sidewalk and either repair it or just replace the whole sidewalk. And like this is happening all the time. Like the school buses come, they go up on the curb because, they want to make sure that the kids are safe or they're not taking over the entire street. And then in the meantime, all the curbs are breaking. So if you see broken sidewalks, definitely call or write to 311 right away and make sure that a few different people are putting in that request all at the same time. So that'll really get it taken care of quickly. Okay, so for ranking requests, we know that the administrative assistant is going to prepare that spreadsheet, and that, if you don't have an administrative assistant, usually the president will do it. It's pretty complicated. It's not like your typical spreadsheet. There's a lot of drop-down menus, and depending on your internet connection, it could take like half the day. But it's going to get done. And when you're doing your ranking, we want to make sure that all of the council members are involved in creating this rank order list. Like, you're not going to have a situation where you submit your projects and the president is going to make all the decisions. That is not the way this is supposed to work. You're all supposed to collectively and publicly have this conversation. Ask your school leaders and your parent leaders, your principals to come to your CEC meeting and talk about why they think their project should be prioritized. I think we used to have a lot of students come and talk about why they needed elevators. So that just really makes for great public conversations, because it's really important to make sure that everybody knows what's going on in the district and what we need to be advocating for. So the transfer of the information to the SCA usually happens the first or second week of January. Meaning you need to get all of your CEC work done usually before the holiday break. So we have 2 months left, and for whoever's on this call that is not a CEC member, please help your CEC members to get this work done, because it's really, really important. If you can make connections, please do that. Help them to help you. And then don't forget, you can send a comment letter, create a resolution, send letters to your elected officials. Just make sure that you're advocating as much as you possibly can.